time for you to get them. But yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just sent them to you. So just let me know and give. You can call me back or text me. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Bye bye. Didn't I say I sent this to you?
That was like all praises be to God. You got to bring the appearance that was like all praises be to God. You got to bring the appearance
that we'll be getting. We ask that it be uplifting and building
that was
to your
like
kingdom. In Jesus' name, we do
all
pray.
praises be to God. You got to bring the appearance
that we'll be getting. We ask that it be uplifting and building to your kingdom. In Jesus' name, we do
all
pray.
praises be to God. You got to bring the appearance
that we'll be getting. We ask that it be uplifting and building to your kingdom. In Jesus' name, we do
all
pray.
praises be to God.
there's parts of your life where there's these big question marks that I'm hoping you can answer for me.
Okay.
But I want the full truth.
Now I'm nervous.
Scooter Braun is the man behind some of the biggest stars in the music industry.
And he built one of the most disruptive entertainment empires on the planet.
I've never really said this out loud until right now. At this age, I feel a lot of guilt because I worked with so many young artists and we were all kids moving so fast and we all wanted to succeed so bad. And it wasn't until I was 40 years old doing some intense therapy that I realized I was so driven by the fear that I wouldn't be enough. So let's go back. As a kid growing up, I wanted to prove that I could be more than the privilege I was born with. And I created this character, Scooter, because I didn't think Scott could achieve these things. And that mask made me absolutely relentless, faking it till I make it. Like, I had no right convincing Justin and his mom to be on the first plane they'd ever been on and meet me.
So what were they betting on?
My ignorance. But it was also realizing that so much of insecurity drives us and makes us great. Like, now that I'm here, I can't fail because then everyone will see that I shouldn't be here. So let's go for it. And then we had such extreme success. The whole world thought I was crushing it. But I had built this mask so big, I didn't realize how far away I'd gotten from Scott. So here I am, the top of my game. I wanted to kill myself. I went to a very dark place and I broke down crying. Because I spent so much time trying to impress people who didn't love me instead of realizing how many people already did. And I was so desperate to do the thing I had never done before.
What was that? This has always blown my mind a little bit. 53% of you that listen to this show regularly haven't yet subscribed to the show. So could I ask you for a favor before we start? If you like the show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free, simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, then I'll do everything in my power, me and my team, to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. We'll listen to your feedback, we'll find the guests that you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much. Scooter, when I look at your life and I look at the things you've achieved, so much of it makes sense, but then there's these other parts of your life where there's these big question marks that I'm hoping you can answer for me. And maybe the earliest question mark that remains in my head is what it is that drives you. Because from an exceedingly young age, there was this dog in you. There was something. For me, when I was going through the research, it looked like a chip on your shoulder or something to prove to someone. And so that's really where I wanted to start. I want to understand your earliest context so I can understand the cauldron that Scooter was shaped in and the way that that made the boy turn to a man. Big question, but that's the
starter, right
the
out the
burning
gate.
question in my head.
You know, it's funny because you started by asking Scooter, what drives you? And it took me a long time to figure out as an adult that it was actually Scott, my real name, that was the real driver. And I really created this guy Scooter when I was an adult because I didn't think Scott could achieve these things. So I almost like created a mask. And it wasn't until I was 40 years old doing some intense therapy that I fell in love with my name again and realized the answer to your question, which is part of it was shame. Of why, with my family's background, am I getting all this privilege? My father's a refugee from Hungary. My mother, her dad died when she was 11, and her mother struggled to raise them with family help in the Catskill Mountains. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And here I am, first generation, born in America, and I wanted to prove that I could be more than the privilege I was born with. And so I had that chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove my value. I wanted to prove I was worthy of this.
Who's told you had to?
No one. I think, as a kid growing up, I read it that way because, you're hearing the stories of the Holocaust. And my dad, every night before he put me and my brother to bed, would say, hey, boys, you're different. You're special. I hold you to a higher standard. Every night before we went to bed. And we started to really believe him of like, we need to hold ourselves to this higher standard. We need to do more. The idea of failing, the idea of looking at my parents and not achieving it, that's what drove me. And years ago, I was on a podcast, probably 10 years ago. I was doing a podcast with Complex, with this guy, Noah.
I watched it.
Do you remember the baseball analogy?
Yes, I literally wrote it down in my notes.
Well, I will tell it again, but I will tell you on your podcast the difference I hold today.
Okay.
They asked me what it takes to be successful. And I made up this analogy with baseball. And I said, imagine Cy Young Award winner CC Sabathia at the height of his career is in the middle of Yankee Stadium, and they invite everyone to come hit a home run. And they say, you get as many at-bats as you want, and whoever hits the home run wins like the, $1 billion, $1 million, whatever it is. And you can imagine everyone flies in from all around the world. People are fulfilling from New York City. The line is crazy. And I said, the person who's successful is not only the person who finally gets up to the plate and swings and misses, but stays at the plate. And now people are saying, are you kidding me? There's lines of millions of people waiting for their turn, and you're going to stay there? You're going to stay there and swing again? And they swing again. And then everyone's booing, and they swing again. And they literally keep swinging as everyone is booing them and booing them and booing them for hours. They're the most selfish person in the world. You don't deserve to be here. Get off that plate. This is not. And then they finally hit that homer. And everyone cheers because, oh my God, they did it. And I said that years ago. And it wasn't until recently that I realized there's one difference in the story. I never understood who the crowd was. I always thought the crowd was being able to shut out the outside noise. I always thought the crowd was the naysayers and all the people who in your life who will tell you you're never going to achieve anything. And that's part of it. But the crowd, all those people waiting in line, is actually you. That's what I never realized till now. That's the difference. I always thought when people ask me what drove you, I thought it was all the outside noise. I thought it was the fear of failure, the fear of letting them down, all these different things. And it wasn't until recently when I hit some hardships as an adult and really had to look inward that I realized everyone's got the same crowd and everyone has their own issues and everyone has their own stuff. And what actually brings you to success and self-worth and happiness is actually understanding how to stand at that plate and shut out the noise that's here. Not the millions of people around. The millions of people are in your head screaming at you, telling you you're not enough. The deep, deep lie from the most confident people, they have it. So I'm glad I get to finally publicly say the difference because I've had it wrong all these years.
And in that analogy, you talk about how most people come up to the plate, they swing once,
They leave.
they hear the boo, they leave, they go back to their sofa or wherever they're coming from.
Or they swing 2-3 times, everyone's telling them they're selfish and they get, oh my God, and they're embarrassed and they leave. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot for someone to stand there in the middle of the noise, shut out the noise and understand the opportunity was given to me. I deserve this. I'm going to keep swinging.
Going back to your early context, Scott.
Yeah.
Your dad, Irvin.
Yeah.
He sounds like quite a tough guy. I was reading about some of the things he was saying to you when you were a kid, and I was like, damn, Jesus. Like when he called you a liar that day and told you about living with integrity, etc.
My dad grew up tough. And it was almost like when you're being raised by two people who lived through what they lived through, they were raising him for a world that took everything away from them. They were so loving. They still raised him that way. And then he was so loving, but he still raised us really tough. And I was the firstborn son, so I'm the oldest of all the kids. So he was very tough on me. You're referencing this time when I was probably 14. And he caught me in like a white lie. And usually he would punish me, and his punishments could be severe. But this time he just said, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. It's not going to be a punishment this time. I just want you to know you got the gift for gab. You could talk your way out of anything. And in life, I used to tell you, if you lie, you're not going to be successful. I want to tell you the truth. You're so good at it, you might be successful, but you're going to be a liar. And I'll know you're a liar, and you'll know you're a liar. So do with that with what you want. And I was so beaten down and ashamed because it wasn't like raining down fists on me. It was just like the guy I admired so much called me a liar. And I walked away. I was messed up. And I went back to him and I said, Dad, I want you to know I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be a man of integrity. I could do that, but I understand this opportunity, what you're saying. And he just looked at me and said, okay, good. And he walked away. And it was one of the best lessons ever, because he was right. Like you can win certain ways, but you're going to know how do you want to win? You want to do it the right way. And that tough love, I'm appreciative of it.
You go to college?
I went to college.
You went to college. You started a business at college doing events.
Yeah, well, I started selling fake IDs. That's what I started
First,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, I sold fake IDs because my friend sold fake IDs and I thought he had a bad business plan. So I was like, I'll market them, you make them. And quickly he broke my golden rule of not keeping in touch with people we sold to. So I stopped immediately because I didn't want to get caught. And I walked by a nightclub and said, how much would you give me if I brought people here the next week? And that was the beginning of my Atlanta party promotion days.
Why did that succeed? What is it about you, as you look back in hindsight, your skill set, your ability, that made your party promotion days so successful, which eventually sort of parlayed into music? But
a combination of things. I think one, I wasn't a threat to the freshman girls. I had a high school sweetheart at the time. I was very committed to her. I was a decently cute kid and I could dance.
Okay.
So I was a good person to go out with and have fun. So that was one thing. Number two, I was playing sports. So I had a lot of friends in different, teams and different arenas. And three, I was in the right place at the right time. That first party I threw was successful. And at that first party, I was approached by a guy named Jason Weaver. He's an actor. And he was in this old Michael Jackson movie I used to watch as a kid where he played young Michael. And he came in and he said, this is crazy, because Atlanta at that time was very segregated in the club scene. So it was like, if you were black, you went to a party that, a club that played hip hop. And if you were white, you went to a club they played techno. But I didn't grow up in the South. And I wanted to listen to hip hop and rock and roll. And we played that. And when Jason came in, he was so fascinated to see a mixed crowd listening to hip hop that he was like, you want to see how the other half lives. And Jason brought me to a club called Velvet Room on Tuesday nights in Atlanta, Georgia. It was ran by a guy named Alex Gidewan. Alex was so fascinated to see me in the line. He said, let this kid in here. And Alex taught me how to promote. He taught me what the value of the door actually was, what I should be getting from the bar. And I would start moving my parties, and I would spend all my money that I made on Thursday nights at the college party on Alex's Tuesday night, meeting people, meeting rappers, meeting singers, meeting different people, faking it till I make it, and getting people to come back and forth between my parties. And that's how I started. That's how I met Jermaine. That's how I met Luda. We all kind of came up together.
Relationships. Why did he give you a foot up? So many people are early in their careers and they're having these chance encounters, but those aren't converting into a relationship. And when I look at your life, there's people you meet along the way who end up being really, really pivotal. And it appears to me as an objective observer that you have an ability to form good relationships, loyal, lasting relationships with people.
One, I think it's important to pay people respect. I came from a household where you respect your elders. And when I was coming up, I was 19. So I was very respectful of the people that are giving me an opportunity. And I never forgot who helped me along the way. I think the other thing, there was a big part of my philosophy was let your work be the reason they want to meet you. I didn't want to be that kid who was going, hey, give me an opportunity. And by the way, sometimes that works. But I wanted them to see what I was doing and then say, come over here. I didn't approach Jermaine Dupri to work at So Def. Jermaine heard about me and my parties and he met me and he said, you have more potential than parties. Why don't you come work for me? I didn't approach, Ludacris, who was coming up as a rapper, and say, let me do that. A lot of people in my life, I never really approached them. And then even as my life changed and I got older, I made a lot of relationships. I have a lot of relationships now that I've never done business with. And people will go, well, you have that. Why don't you? And it was because I never wanted anyone to feel, probably my insecurity is I never wanted anyone to feel like I needed them. I never wanted to feel like a user. It was like my own insecurities of how they might see me. Mm-hmm. But I think on top of that, it was that same old thing of never wanting to be in a position where you're begging somebody for something.
I called Jermaine and we spoke to him, and I listened to the recording again just before you arrived. But what Jermaine said in that voice recording is also pretty similar to what your dad said, which is they both saw something in you. You're this young kid who doesn't have an extensive track record of decades of work, but they're all betting on you in some way. As you look back on your life, what were they betting on? Because they all seem pretty sure that you had something.
My ignorance. I think no one told me I shouldn't be there.
And he offered you a job for working at his company, which meant you had to drop out of college?
I didn't have to drop out of college. I did because I went to work for Jermaine. And now I'm traveling all the time. I'm still throwing parties. You know, we're gearing up for Usher's album. We're doing this, we're doing that. I'm working with the Youngbloods, Anthony Hamilton. Like and I'm 19, 20 years old. And my grade point average went from a 3-point something to a 1-point something. And they brought me in on academic probation. And they said, you know, what's going on with you? Is there a drug problem? Are you being abused? And I said, no. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building this. I want to build a record label. I'm working for Jermaine Dupri. You know, and this guy's looking at me like I'm insane. And this dean looks at me at Emory and he says, do you know the story of Robert Woodruff? And I said, you know, Robert Woodruff? He goes, yeah, the founder of Coca-Cola, the Woodruff Center, the largest endowment at Emory. And he tells me this amazing story of this entrepreneur who created Coca-Cola, who is the largest endowment at our university. And I'm so hyped. I'm like, this guy gets me. He gets me. He's going to help me. I'm going to be at the school. And just when my hopes are really high, he looks at me and goes, you know what we're going to do, right? Because we're going to stop all the nonsense. You're going to focus on school. You're going to get a degree because the chance of you being like Robert Woodruff without an Emory degree is like 1 in a billion. And the moment he said it, that's when I dropped out of school.
What did your father say?
Before you ask me about my father, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
You made a face and you paused.
Yeah.
Because you have your own story of something happening like this.
I just have I just have a real hate for dream busters.
Yet every great story we have of success, people tell of that pivotal moment, whether it be this dean or Michael Jordan being cut by his coach, the varsity coach when he was younger.
Yeah.
We all talk about the dream buster as a catalyst to our success. And, you know, in life, I kind of feel like everything, even, you know, it's like I have this tattoo, Amor Fati, you know, from Marcus Aurelius. It's a concept, love of one's fate in Latin. And it's this concept that you have to love the sorrow as much as you love the joy. You have to love the pain as much as you love the success. You know, if it wasn't for that dean, I wouldn't have had that chip on my shoulder in that moment. I would just push you on the fact that like you hate these dream busters, but I am so grateful for them.
I'm grateful for the dream busters. However, and this is actually something I was talking to my friends about in our group chat this morning. Is it okay, in your view, to be driven by haters? It's so funny because
if you're only driven by haters, no. But I think that everything plays its role at the time. Like Robert Greene, he talks about this idea of embracing your dark side. And I think that there's truth in that. Like, you know, if you continue to fight something that's naturally inside of you, you're going to really struggle with it. If you can accept that's part of you, can use it as fuel and you can move right through it. So yes, there are things that drive me. My curiosity is a big driver for where I go. My children now are a big driver for where I go and how I live my life. The people I love, the joy that I find, the introspective voice that now I can go to when I'm meditating or, you know, working, you know, on myself. But doubt from someone who dislikes me or doubt from a hater, I can pretend like I'm Zen as much as I want. But if I'm being really honest with myself, sometimes that's the fuel that I need. So I think if it's solely one thing, it's not healthy. But I think if you can admit you get fuel and different influences from different places and don't try and be ashamed of the one that doesn't fit in your narrative of how evolved you are, you know, then it's okay.
You established SB Projects, I believe, after leaving Jermaine when you were 24, 25 years old?
24.
And I read that you'd kind of had this plan to sign 3 different types of acts.
Yeah.
First one, Asher Roth, who's a very famous rapper.
Yeah, I wanted to sign 3 types of acts, and Asher fit the mold for one, Justin for the other, and the other one I never found.
So Asher, for people that don't know, is a very successful rapper. What was the mold you were trying to fit?
Eminem was a very big rapper. He's one of the biggest rappers of all time. And I was in college and I'm watching all like these, at the time, these frat guys, but they loved hip hop. And I don't think they had anyone who spoke to their life. So I wanted a kid who could speak to college life, who had the skills to be credible within the world of hip hop.
Why did you think you could find talent? What did you believe?
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Okay.
I'm telling you, every aspect of my life, if we talked about every little thing that I've been in, you said earlier, I've been in all these different things, and probably your listeners have no idea what the hell I am. So they're like, what is he talking about? But every time I put myself in that next arena, it's this why not me? I had no right contacting Asher on MySpace. I mean, at that point, I could say, okay, I came from So So Def. I was the youngest vice president of music because of Jermaine. When I was at So So Def, I was 20 years old. So I had the right, some credibility other people didn't have. I definitely could do that. But to tell him to drop out of college and move down to Atlanta, Georgia be the first artist on my record label, to, find Justin in Canada and convince his mom and him to be on the first plane they'd ever been on to come down to Atlanta and meet me. I mean, I was 25 years old, 24 years old. Like I was insane.
So interesting. When we talk about belief, we ask if, Scooter, did you have belief? But in your case, you had the lack of limiting beliefs, which shows up the same as having belief.
Yeah,
There was just nothing.
It wasn't even because I was so driven by also the fear that I wouldn't be enough, that back then I would have lied. I would have said, oh, I had such a deep belief in my conviction that I could do it. It was partially that, but it was also, why not me? And no one told me I can't be here. And also, now that I'm here, I can't fail because then everyone will see that I shouldn't be here. And so it was this fear, excitement, conviction. That's why I always tell people when I meet them as young people, I'm like, you don't have kids. You can starve a little bit. Your parents want you to go the easiest route because they don't want to see you suffer. But now is the time when you should be suffering. If you want to go for it, now's the time when you don't have anyone to support, where you can really, really go for it. Because later on in life, you got to think about other people. And back then, 19 years old to 24, let's go for it.
And the second artist that you signed was called Justin Bieber. Who's Justin Bieber? Justin Bieber. You were 26 years old when you came across Justin?
25.
25. And he was 12? 13?
13.
Damn. You discovered Justin by watching a So Sick video by Neo?
Yeah, I saw a bunch of videos from his church his mom had posted, and the one that moved me the most was So Sick by Neo.
Change my answering machine now that I'm alone, 'cause right now it says that we can't come to the phone, and I know it makes no sense. Cause you walked out the door. It's the only way I hear your voice anymore.
You must have been asked this a gazillion times, but the actions you then took based on seeing a kid on a video are bizarre.
Yeah.
They are bizarre.
Yeah, I Googled the background of the church to look up the businesses, and then called the regions of Canada school boards to figure out where he was, because his mom had a different name than him, because her name was Millette, his was Bieber. So I went a little crazy to find him within 24 hours. Once I saw him, I kind of knew.
In person? Or?
No, I knew when I saw online. I was like, this is the kid I've been looking for. And I felt the same way about Asher. I mean, I relentlessly kind of pursued both of them. I had a clear vision to what I could do and what he was capable of. And it was funny because no one believed me. I mean, even after we met and we did the deal and we started working together, literally no one believed me. And YouTube was not a big thing back then. So when I took him from 60,000 views and we took him to 60 million, now he's one of the biggest YouTubers in the world. And everyone's like, yeah, YouTubers don't turn into musicians though.
What were the first principles that you saw in him? Like, what were this? Because when I think about having those moments where my intuition just says yes to something.
Tone.
Okay.
Charisma. It was like he had incredible tone and he had soul and he had charisma. He was doing like, there was one where there was an instrumental and he was like jumping around and I just believed in him instantly. And then when I met him, he had even more charisma. He was funny. And I was like, all right, this kid, let's go. And he was an athlete, so he was competitive. He was a very special talent and a very unique individual. And those were special times.
And you flew in to meet him and his mother?
No, they flew to me.
Oh, okay.
I talked to her for like an hour and a half that night, and first plane ride they ever went on. And I remember he was so excited that there was a fridge inside his hotel room.
His mother said, speaking of you, Scooter really believed in Justin from day one. He put everything on the line for us.
And they put it on the line for me too. You know, they believed in a 25-year-old kid. And we were able to achieve some amazing things. And I'm very proud of what we achieved and always rooting for him.
What's your relationship with Justin now?
Not the same that it was. I think, you know, these things go with ebb and flows. I think there comes a point where I understand he probably wants to go on and show that he can do it. I mean, we worked together for so long and we had such extreme success. And I think you get to a point as a man where you want to show the world you can do it on your own. And I completely respect that. And I think at this point, that's what he's doing. And myself and everyone from the old team is rooting for him. But I stopped managing 2.5 years ago. And now I'm a cheerleader from the side. And, you know, I want everyone that I worked with to do well. I think sometimes when you walk away from management, I've heard managers, which I never understood, they'd be like, deep down when behind closed doors, they don't want to see them do as well without them. It's almost like, you know, them succeeding is tarnishing your legacy. Mm-hmm. Every artist that I worked with, I believed in them because they were great. And if they continue to be great, I think that's the best testimony to that belief. So to see Justin move forward and succeed, to see Ariana, you know, with what's happened with Wicked in this past year, to see Tori Kelly, you know, to see everybody that I've ever had a chance to work with, to see them go on and do great things on their own, it's awesome.
Is there anything that these individuals have in common at all? These people that...
Pain.
Yeah.
I think it's pain, personally. I think to be able to convey emotions on the level that it touches people around the world, you have to understand emotions. And I think great artists, great performers are able to draw from different places. And sometimes it's joy and sometimes it's pain. And sometimes it's just a natural God-given gift.
How important is hard work?
Oh, it's very important. I think, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, you're stepping into a pool where everyone talented wants to be seen. And you have to work incredibly hard to break out of the noise. So, and by the way, I don't think that's particular to artists or music or film or TV or anything I've done with entertainment. I think that's every business I've ever been a part of. The first 3 to 5 years of any business I've ever built in any arena or worked with anyone who's ever achieved anything great, those first 3 to 5 years are the most important.
Sounds like something I said to my girlfriend.
It sounds like, you know, same thing with a relationship, maybe. Like put in the foundation those first 3 to 5 years and really be there together. I really believe that. I think you put in that time in the beginning and you can break through the noise and set a foundation for everything else.
When I think about Justin's career, he had a wobble where he was involved in lots of sort of, you know, it looked like he was going through a bit of difficulty. And I reflect on one of my friends, Liam Payne, and who was on this podcast and who's sadly passed away now. But he also around the same age was thrown into the public eye at a very young age. He joined One Direction, went on the crazy, crazy wild roller coaster ride that is One Direction. And he admitted on the podcast that he struggled. He struggled with addiction. He struggled with lots of pain that he was dealing with. And his story is an inspiring one ultimately, but also a tragic one in many respects. Why does this happen to so many young artists, childhood stars?
You know, when you ask me this question, at this age, I feel a lot of guilt. I feel a lot of guilt because I worked with so many young artists. And like I told you, I hadn't taken the time to look at myself or do the therapy myself until I was older. So I didn't understand at 25 years old, at 27 years old, at 30 years old, that they each were coming from very unique backgrounds of their own stuff with their own families and their own childhoods and growing up this way and being seen by the whole world and being judged by the whole world at a very young age. And I think it's two things. I think one, human beings are not made to be worshiped. I think we're made to serve. And I think that when we worship human beings, it changes something within us. It messes us up a little bit, because that's not what we're built for. And I think that can be very confusing. And I think being able to transcend the childhood of, you know, people cheering your name and everything else at that level and get to the place where the artists I've worked with are, where they are in healthy relationships and with their families and still working through stuff, but like having a human experience, I think it's a testament to their strength. So I think that's part of it. I just think the nature of being on that stage, you know, that young and people chanting your name. And I didn't realize that till, you know, I got older. The other side of it is I never understood, even without me, I didn't have that childhood, yet I broke. And what I think also is important is I don't think we can push everything. I think adversity is important. We can't just talk about mental health and say adversity shouldn't exist. But I do think I understand the importance now of really putting in the time to make sure mental health is addressed and that we have an outlet to speak to someone outside of the crew. And there's a lot of things that I learned within myself that I wish I knew back then. I met those One Direction kids when they started. They came to LA, and actually the whole group, because Niall reached out to me, they came to my house to hang out in the backyard when they were first starting, before they really blew up, like their first US visit to LA. And I met Liam back then. And I met the excited young kid with the voice. Yet each one of them has had a different experience. Each one of them has had a different story of perseverance and tragedy. And that's the thing. It's like with kids, like you just never know what the cocktail is going to make of life. And I think, you know, that idea of we're not made to be worshipped, that can play funny things on the mind.
The brain isn't even developed until you're 25, they tell me. So
I don't even know if mine's developed at 43.
But I've sat here with so many neuroscientists that have said that to me, and also addiction scientists that say the brain is still learning and building its sort of like dopamine receptors and stuff. So Liam was telling me that he was up on stage in front of 100,000 people in Dubai. Huge adrenaline rush, huge surge of dopamine. Then they drive him back to his hotel. He was like, they lock the door and it's just me in there with the minibar. And then the next day, it's the exact same thing. Stage, car, hotel,
and then
locked.
without the stage, you were looking for that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
No, it's like I said, I'm very proud of the job that we did and how much we cared and how much the team cared for all the years that we did it. But it doesn't mean I don't look back and wish that I knew what I know now.
How would you have been different?
I think I would have had a therapist on the road for all of us. Like, you know, I think that's the biggest difference. I think I would have slowed down all of us. I think I would have made every single one of us stop and do that hour, you know, because we were all kids and we were all moving so fast and we all wanted to succeed so bad and we all wanted the excitement, and we wanted to make kids' dreams come true and bring them down from the upper decks to put them in the front row, and, you know, to help Justin get that number one, and, you know, to help Ariana do this. And we all wanted it, and we were excited, and we were doing something that was so unique, and everyone in the world was so excited for us. You know, oh my gosh, you guys are a part of this. This is so cool. I didn't know to go inward for the dopamine hit. And I wish I would have known that and been able to share it back then.
When Justin ultimately said that he wanted to kind of go it alone and do it himself, does that hurt?
No, not at that point. I think I was also at that point. You know, at that point, it had been a couple of years where I knew I wanted to do something else. And I wanted to find out who I was. I wanted to experiment with, you know, a different career. And we were both communicating enough with each other. The writing was on the wall.
How many clients that we would know?
A lot.
Because when I was doing my research, I was like, no, surely not. Carly Rae Jepsen, and then Martin Garrix, Kanye.
Yeah.
Can you give me the top 10 off the top of your head that you worked with?
I'd never say a top 10. No good manager knows not to do that. But I got to work with a lot of incredible artists a long time. I mean, from Zac Brown Band to Black Eyed Peas to Justin to Ariana to, you know, Martin Garrix. We signed while he was at Club Med with his parents. We contacted him because he had the song Animals and we heard it. To Dan and Shay, just to so many over the years. It was pretty incredible to be a part and so close to so many incredible stories, you know, and to see, you know, going to a coffee shop to see Tori Kelly sing, to seeing her walk on a Grammy stage. I got to see really incredible moments in people's lives, to, you know, Demi telling me I want to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, you know, and show me a tweet that she wrote this years ago, to seeing her actually perform, at the Super Bowl, you know. So it's just been a really cool experience, but I got to see it in so many different arenas, and you're only there for a flash, right? You have this little tiny small moment here, a little tiny small moment here, but to get to witness so many different rides, it's a really cool thing. I remember as a kid, I heard this great saying, don't just read stories, try to be a part of them, try to be a story. And I think I've always tried to take that into my life.
Crazy wild. There was a second ago when you were talking, and I stepped into your body for a second, and I ran the highlight reel of your life, just as Justin's sort of manager. And I was thinking, God, like the places you must have been and the things you must have seen, just as his manager, let alone working with all of these other great artists. It's not just a lifetime of experience, it's multiple lifetimes of fortune to get to even see those things.
I met a guy years ago, and I'll name drop here. So I got invited to meet Charlie Munger.
Oh yeah, the investor, yeah.
And everyone was asking him questions about business, and I asked him a question about life. And afterwards, his guy contacted me. He goes, Charlie liked your question. He wanted to meet this other guy that he really likes, who's a brilliant businessman. And I meet this other gentleman, and he tells me he's a statistician by trade. And the reason he's excited to meet me is because people in my world who are part of so many different stories live in dog years, because they get to be a part of kind of so many other people's things.
Yeah.
But it's a unique thing. But I told you, the biggest lesson I learned from all of it is that at one point in my life, I received so much praise. And then the next moment, without me expecting it, I received so much hate. And on the other side of all these experiences, I've come to learn that both were not deserved. The people who were praising me did not know me, and the people who hated me did not know me. And it's like one of my favorite, I saw Tom Hanks say this on like an actor's table one time. He goes, this too shall pass. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's so great. He's like, you think you're killing it? This too shall pass. He's like, you think it's going to be hard? This too shall pass. Like, it's true.
So what do you anchor in then, if so much is transient?
At this point?
In life generally, what does one anchor in? If everything is transient, if, you know, this too shall pass.
You don't have kids yet. I have a major anchor in 3 kids. Major anchor.
What if you don't have kids?
If you don't have kids, that's when you should definitely do the self-work, because your anchor's you. And the truth is, I've really gotten to a beautiful place of, I fully expect to be misunderstood in the future. I expect tomorrow something can happen where, especially because my life has been somewhat in the public eye, you get misunderstood all the time. People make up stories, they twist things, someone's hurt and it comes out this way, that way. I could get pulled into this stuff. It's happened to me already. And so I've come to terms with that. What I've realized is, being on the other side of it already happening to me, all it does is end up making room for something else. So for me, what anchors me is, I no longer think I'm in control, but I think I'm participating in one hell of a game. I can't control the outcome. Steph Curry and LeBron could be at the height of their game, but even they can't control the game. They can influence it. And so that for me, it was like the first half of my life was I'm manifesting, I'm doing this, that youthful energy. And then you turn 40 and this stuff happens and you start the other half of your life, you're like, Michael Singer, I need to surrender. You're at the surrender experiment. Like everything's surrender. And then I realized there's a balance. There's this balance of, I'm participating in an incredible game and I can bring what I bring to the table, and I'm not going to be able to control this game, but maybe I should start enjoying the game a little bit. I'm out here. I'm participating. That's pretty freaking cool. And I think that is what anchors me at this point, that I have no idea what the next 5 to 10 years of my life are going to look like. I used to think I did. Now I know it can change like that. And I think I'm excited for love in the future. I'm excited for adventure. I'm not looking forward to the pain, but I know if it comes, there's a reason for it.
So tell me about an artist that you believed in. You don't have to name them, of course, but an artist you believed in, you were wrong about. Something you really just, your first principles were off. And in hindsight,
I had an artist who was honestly maybe the most talented artist I ever signed. His name was Spencer Lee. And Spencer Lee got brought to me by a buddy of mine named Freddie. And we did a deal for Spencer, and Dave Appleton, who I told you about, my buddy, was trying to handle in management. And Dave started calling me saying, hey, there's some real addiction issues here and we're really struggling. And we put him into rehab, and then he wrote one of the most incredible songs, River Water.
River water, wash me clean, send away my worries, please. River water, take me down, show me the dreams that I never found. River water, smell, wanna drown.
About addiction. And when he got out, we thought, okay, he's going to be clean and everything great. We made this video and we started getting going. We made the Spencer Lee Band, and we started putting him out there, like paying for everything to kind of get it going. And he started doing festivals, and we started getting phone calls of like, hey, people are coming to see this insane talent with this voice. And he went back to drugs, and he overdosed last year. And he's no longer with us. And we got the news because his grandmother, who's the sweetest, she called to say thank you for trying and everything else. And that was the love of her life, and she lost him. And that one I got wrong, because I thought, maybe if we get the records right, if we get the music, if he gets on the road, he gets out of rehab, this would be enough. It's one of the biggest tragedies, because I can't tell you how good he was. I mean, he just a special talent. You listen to this guy's records. Sometimes I always say I want to reach out to his family and be like, let's just release the records. Like the ones that I have that the world's never heard. And all the money should go to, a cause, to help people in a similar situation. I wish we could do that. I'd love to get permission to do that. Because he was one of the most special talents I ever came across.
They don't want to release the records?
It's complicated.
Last week I was in New York interviewing one of the world's leading addiction experts. And for anyone that hasn't been through addiction, it's a very confusing thing to observe. because as an onlooker, you just go, just stop that. You're self-destructing. But if you've had friends that have dealt with addiction, you realize that it's not an attempt to self-destruct. It's like an attempt to... It's like it's maybe the last attempt to do the opposite, to survive from something.
When I was dealing with addiction with someone I managed, someone I really respect told me about Al-Anon. Al-Anon is for a support. It's like AA, but for the families. And they recommend I go. And I went to 2 Al-Anon meetings. And it was very helpful at the time. And one of the things I learned there was, one, this concept of it is not your fault. This is not about you, that you have to love them where they're at. You can, but the biggest thing I really learned was be a rock. This person said to me, home doesn't move around. Home is a constant place that someone can come back to. If someone beats addiction, it is because of them. They've made that choice and they deserve the credit. But if you want to be helpful, this person said, just try to be a constant place. They know that no matter what, at the end, they can come back and you'll be waiting.
Understanding your story, you stuck around with Justin when he went through his difficult times, and people were calling for you to drop him and to maybe move on.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting time. But like I said, if someone beats that, they deserve the credit. So I don't deserve any credit in that. He does.
You ended up posting that post on your Instagram, which sent a ton of headlines around the world saying that you were quitting music management.
23 years?
After 23 years. There was a little bit of a question mark, though, because I think you referenced in something you'd posted that part of your inspiration or a catalyst was a particular artist had decided that they wanted to go their own way.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I prefer not to say. There's a bunch of legal stuff around that, everything else. Okay. But she informed me, and I respected the hell out of it, that she felt that way. And but I had that conversation with others too. I wrote it all in 23 years. The reason I posted that at the time was I'd already made the decision a year prior, but I'd never talked about it. And, when you're running a big company, there's all these, legal things, and we had to wait till everything was in order, and then I could say it. And they were like, well, you've already been out of it for a year. Why say it now? And I just felt I need to say it for me, but I also need to say it so I hold myself accountable not to ever go back.
Okay.
And it was way too long. It was like 10 slides on Instagram.
No, it was incredible.
But it was, I appreciate you saying that, but it was from the heart. And I remember waking up, posting it, and then just like falling down, because I was like, oh my God, like this thing I've been doing since I was 19 is now over. And what I wrote in there is the truth. My entire adult life, that's all I had known. So not being in that situation, I didn't know what a normal adult life was like. I didn't know you could have a weekend. Like, I didn't know, like that's what it was. I was on call all the time for 23 years. And it wasn't one, it was a lot. And finding out what a normal adult life was like was pretty wild to me, and also really interesting. But I had some of the most incredible memories, and I'm very grateful. But if you remember, do you remember the Berry Gordy quote at the end?
No, I don't.
Berry Gordy's the founder of Motown Records. Berry Gordy is a kid from Detroit.
Michael Jackson's theater play. Berry Gordy.
Correct.
Yes.
So before Berry Gordy, Black musicians would make incredible music, and a white person could come along and just cover it and make it theirs. And Berry Gordy took that back and gave us Motown Records and changed the entire music industry. And I was at a dinner, and Berry Gordy was placed next to me. And I was just like freaking out. Berry Gordy sitting next to me. And we start talking. And this is years before. He said, I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to need it one day. And boy, was he right. And he said, do you know what the Motown 25 was? And I said, absolutely. It was the first time Michael Jackson did the moonwalk, Diana Ross. And he's like, oh, you really are a Motown fan. I was like, yeah. And he said, well, do you know I didn't want to go? I said, what? He goes, yeah, I didn't want to go. At the time, Michael had left for CBS Records, Diana had left for CBS Records, and everyone was saying that I took their publishing, and I was like the bad guy for all these people that I had supported and lifted, and like I was so angry, and I didn't want to go. I said, well, what changed? He goes, my family made me go. And I said, yeah, because I remember you were in the balcony and they kept cutting to you. And he goes, the first I get there and Diana Ross is hosting, Michael's going to perform. He's the biggest thing in the world. I'm mad. But as the night went on, I suddenly realized little Barry from Detroit would have lost his mind knowing this was coming. He said, young man, it will never end the way you want it to, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I didn't know how much I needed that in the years to come. You can plan it, you can try and control it as much as you want, but Barry Gordy was right. It will never end the way you want it unless you're Derek Jeter on the Yankees, or you're Messi. But most of us, it's not going to end the way we wanted. However, it happened, and how cool is that? Like, how cool is that? That like we get to do this and get to have this life. And I thought that's the way I wanted to end 23 years, because me stopping managing and ending managing, and it didn't end the way I necessarily wanted. I would have wanted a giant concert where all the artists come out, we celebrate everything we did together, and ended pretty abruptly of like, oh, this is it. And some want to leave and some want to stay, and yeah, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And some people understood it and other people didn't, but it happened, and no one could ever take that away.
Did you ever feel betrayed?
Oh, of course. But I'm sure that goes both ways. Like, as much as I felt betrayed, like, music business can be heartbreaking. Management can be heartbreaking. If you watch David Geffen's documentary, he says management is like, move the mountain over here, and they say it was supposed to be there. But at the same time, it must be heartbreaking the other way. It's such an interdependent relationship, and it's such, people always say, stay on your side of the street. I try to do that. It's easier for me to move on with my life and be happy by staying on my side of the street. So yeah, I've definitely felt betrayed 100 times. I've definitely felt misunderstood so many times. But I also try to give empathy of, if someone is doing this to me, they must be hurting for some reason. And maybe I did play a role in it, even if I don't know I did. So do you feel betrayed? Yes, especially in a job of service.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. We all do have a preconception of how the run will end.
Man, we're all the protagonists in our own story.
Now that there's been some space between that decision.
Yeah. 2.5 years.
2.5 years since that decision. Wow. 2.5 years. Wow. It feels like it was 6 months ago.
Well, it was 2.5 years for me.
Okay.
It's been probably 1.5 years since I probably posted that.
Okay. You've had some space since that decision. Correct decision?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even high conviction now that it was the right thing?
Yeah. And like I said, it happened. In hindsight, it was what it was supposed to be at the time it was supposed to be. I think the reason why I wrote 23 years and why I quit, I wouldn't say I quit, when I retired and stopped doing that, when I moved on, how about that? When I moved on to something else, was because exactly what I wrote. It was, I was too afraid to find out who I was without it for so long that I probably should have left earlier. But I finally got to a point where I realized either you do it now or something bad. You're going to have to learn the hard way again. Mm-hmm. So it was time. And it was time for some of the most amazing artists that I worked with to also spread their wings and do their own thing.
I think B2B marketers keep making this mistake. They're chasing volume instead of quality. And when you try to be seen by more people instead of the right people, all you're doing is making noise, but that noise rarely shifts the needle, and it's often quite expensive. And I know, as there was a time in my career where I kept making this mistake, that many of you will be making it too. Eventually, I started posting ads on our show sponsors platform, LinkedIn, and that's when things started to change. I put that change down to a few critical things. One of them being that LinkedIn was then, and still is today, the platform where decision makers go to, not only to think and learn, but also to buy. And when you market your business there, you're putting it right in front of people who actually have the power to say yes. And you can target them by job title, industry, and company size. It's simply a sharper way to spend your marketing budget. And if you haven't tried it, how about this? Give LinkedIn ads a try, and I'm going to give you a $100 ad credit to get you started. If you visit linkedin.com/diary, you can claim that right now. That's linkedin.com/diary. You sold your company for $1.1 billion. That's what I read. You can't confirm or deny it, but...
That's publicly traded, so I can confirm, but I don't like talking about it.
Okay. But you sold your company for $1.1 billion, which I don't think people realize. It's a fucking lot of money. At 39 years old, roughly?
Yeah. I was about to turn 40.
You talk about laying on the beach.
Yeah.
With your belly out.
Yeah.
I mean, with a significant amount of money in your bank account, without the same job that's sort of demanding your time 7 days a week? A lot of people are scared of that. A lot of, not the money. but the gap, the uncertainty, the space?
Honestly, the timing of when it happened for me, I was in such a place, like I said, of surrender, that I really wasn't looking at it as like achievement or money or something like that. I more looked at it as, what are you going to do now? Are you going to try and control, or are you going to participate, like I told you earlier? And I started to just be curious for the first time. Instead of, I love this idea of a competitive mind versus a curious and creative mind. Mm-hmm. A competitive mind is what I had, and it's where I was, of there's always something finite when you're competitive. You know, it's going to finish. There's going to be an outcome, and then what? But when you're operating from a curious and creative mind, there's no end. You can just continue to create, you continue to build. And I want to be in that place in my life now of how big can I think? I saw this Jeff Bezos interview the other day, and he just said one of the biggest curses of an entrepreneur is not thinking big enough. You know, and I think, think big. You only get one ride around this thing. Think big, have fun, love your friends, love your family, dance, laugh, cry, do all the things and get to know yourself more and more every single day.
Just before that time, we have this whole Taylor Swift incident.
What happened?
Is this the moment you're talking about where you received bad press?
Oh, bad press. Yeah. When I bought Big Machine, I thought I was going to work with all the artists on Big Machine. I thought it was going to be like an exciting thing. I knew that Taylor, she and I had only met 3 times, I think in my life, 3 or 4 times. And one of the times, it was years earlier, it was really a great engagement. She invited me to her private party, and we respected each other. We had a great engagement. In between that time, since I'd seen her last, I started managing Kanye West. I managed Justin Bieber. I knew she didn't get along with them. I had a feeling, this is where my arrogance came in. I had a feeling she probably didn't like me because I managed them, but I thought that once this announcement happened, she would talk to me, see who I am, and we would work together. And the announcement came out, and I'm calling Scott Borchetta and saying, hey, send me her number. I just talked to Thomas Rhett, and he's excited. And I just talked to, this person, and they're excited. And I'm calling, Florida Georgia line next. And I'm gonna get you. And then this Tumblr comes out and it says all this stuff, and I was just like shocked. And it's been 5-6 years. I don't need to go back into it. But what I can tell you is everything in life is a gift. Having that experience allows me to have empathy for the people I worked with, who I would always say, yeah, I understand, but I never knew what it was like to be on the global stage like that. I never knew what criticism like that felt like. And like I told you, the biggest gift that I got from that was understanding that all the praise I had received up until that moment was not deserved. And all the hate I got after that moment was not deserved, because none of these people knew me.
Yeah.
She didn't know me. This person didn't know me. This person who met me 3 times, they didn't know me. I can show respect for all of them because I don't know them. So I can love them where they're at. But the gift of pain was awareness. And the other part, I was going through something very personal. Shortly after, I was going through the divorce, my marriage, and all these different things. And it just felt like one after another. But I look back, if those things didn't happen, I really think they're all gifts. Because when something's fair, you don't respect it. When something happens to you that you feel is fair, you're just like, oh, I deserve that. You move on. You feel justified because you saw it coming. When something happens to you that feels deeply unfair and you can't fix it, then you really got to look at everything and realize the role you played in this, or maybe this or that, or who do you want to be, or so I'm grateful.
But how does one contend with an unfair world? And I use the word unfair as well because, we've got investigative researchers here who looked through everything relating to that particular deal. And then we also looked at what's written on the internet. And there's this great disparity between what actually happened and what people say happened.
Yeah.
And I think there's a documentary out there which goes into it in great detail, which Andrew Schultz was talking about on a podcast, which I saw. So I looked at that documentary as well.
I mean, look, I'm grateful for a couple of things. One, my kids were really young when it happened, so they didn't feel it as much.
Yeah.
It was very hard at the time. It was hard on the marriage. It was hard on our family.
You're
But I
getting
also
death
don't-
threats.
Yeah, but I also don't know what was being said on the other side, because I never got to have the conversation. So I think when people aren't communicating and refusing to communicate, a lot of things can get misconstrued, and I don't want to hold any hatred or everyone moves on, So yes, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate actually doing the research, but for me, I choose to see it as a gift. I choose to see it as being able to have a perspective that very few people in the world have, of knowing what that's like, of feeling that on a global level.
Pain.
Yeah. And also just,
What does that mean in reality? When you
it just felt unfair. It felt like, but of course it happened to me, right? Of course, because here I was thinking my value was from all this praise, and everything was me making sure that I was living up to it. And then this happens and it's unfair and I can't control it. And of course the universe was like screaming at me, like God's screaming at me like, hey, wake up. You're not in control. You can't navigate all of this. You don't get to decide what your legacy is. And you just get to decide who you are on a daily basis and who you choose to see in yourself and how you treat the people that love you and the people you can actually interact with.
surrender.
But surrender and participate. That's the big thing for me. It's more than just surrender. It's surrender and participate and just enjoy the ride. That's why I got the tattoo. It was, I can't worry about everyone's niece being mad at me. It's what I got to do is show up for my niece, and I got to show up for my friends and my family. And I wish everyone involved across the board, whether I know them or not, nothing but good wishes.
When I say specifically that pain, people don't think about how many people on earth have experienced such a thing. And if I could be a fly on the wall that is actually just has CCTV for eyes, and I was watching you at that moment in time, just for 7 days, I got to watch Scooter. Mm-hmm. What would I have seen?
Like I said, at that point, I hadn't really done the work.
Okay. So resistance,
trying to navigate it, trying to understand it, trying to figure out how to fix it. And then I couldn't, but then I did financially. Like I couldn't fix the relationship that I didn't have. But then I was able to figure out, okay, you know what? We will sell it. In a world of streaming, re-records will only help the old catalog as much as they help the new catalog. Both will get a bump. I presented that. I showed, how everyone can be a winner here. And I was able to sell the catalog. And I don't want to go into too much detail, sure. but I offered it. It's now come out very factually that I did offer it. There's evidence of that multiple times in that process. They said no. I sold it to someone else and I washed my hands of it and moved on. And I actually sometimes look back at that and I go, the universe was trying to teach me something. And I navigated out of it. I found a way out. So then the universe went, oh man, we tried to give you a warning sign. We try to you're sailing by on the Titanic and we're waving like iceberg. And then the universe said, okay, you really didn't pay attention and you still aren't doing the work. Marriage. Because that one got me. That one got me to pay attention. Losing my kids 50% of the time, that one changed everything. And the world, that still couldn't move me. I was still able to figure out the chessboard. But my kids and my marriage, that one rocked me and woke me up. And what's really crazy is when I told you I did this Hoffman process, I won't tell you the process because you're not supposed to, but I can tell you at the end of the week.
Can you give it context for anyone that doesn't know the
Hoffman process is this 1 week, no phone, no email, intense work on your early childhood to understand why you are the way you are and give you tools to go out in the world and understand yourself. The reason I went, October of 2020, my marriage was falling apart. The whole world thought I was crushing it. Ariana's crushing it. Justin's all these people we're on fire. And I had a suicidal thought for 20 minutes where I was like, if my marriage is going to fall apart, I'm not going to be with my kids all the time. I can't control this. I'm not going to be this perfect image that I've presented to the world. And if I can't be this perfect image, I don't want to be here. And it went to a very dark place. And after 20 minutes, I said, what the hell was that? That's not me. I would never leave my kids. I don't want to leave anybody. What was that? And the next morning, I was on the set of a video shoot, and a friend of mine called and he said, what's going on with you? And I told him about that night before. He called me back with another friend and they said, you need to go to Hoffman. We did it. It changed our life. They told me that they could get me in 2 weeks because there was a cancellation. October 24th. And that was the release of Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman album. It was the busiest week of the year for me in work. And I started laughing in the parking lot of this video shoot. And she goes, do you want us to pick another week? I said, no. I said, I've spent my whole life pursuing these things, doing this, choosing Scooter, choosing that life, choosing the clients. And I'm the top of my game, yet I wanted to kill myself last night. Something's got to change. And I chose to go to that place instead. And the hard stuff actually came after I got out of Hoffman. I ended up going through a divorce. I ended up going through all this different stuff. But I never was depressed again. And the most interesting thing that happened on the other side of it is 6 years ago, I was biggest manager and the perfect marriage and